The pumpkin spice bugger. Start by matching the barb of a U104 size 8 3x long hook, and then thread a 5/32 of an inch bead over that small hole first. Then get the bead and the hook firmly set in the jaws of your vise. Load a bobbin with A-dot floral orange thread, here Veevus. Start your thread behind the bead and wrap back before cutting the tag end off. Then create a nice ample underbody in between, behind the bead, and above the bent hook barb. Go to some rusty brown Marabou blood quills. Find a nice fluffy feather and strip off all the crappy fibers on the bottom, and then kind of push all the fibers up to align the tips. Bring the tips facing towards the bend of the hook and measure a tail about 1.5 times the hook shank in length. Then go ahead and cut the rest off and tie the butt ends behind the bead. And wrap back. Your tail should be extending 1.5 hook times the hook shank past the bend of the hook. Then go to some hot orange Krystal flash and cut about 6 or 8 fibers off. You can store them in a Hackle plier if you want. Now bring them up to your fly. Align the tips and fold the fibers in half. And then bring it on top of the hook. Bring each one section of 6 and one section of 6 to each side. And then wrap that down towards the bend. And then cut them just longer than the Marabou tail. Now go to some small copper wire. And go ahead and cut a section that's about 5 or 6 inches long. Go ahead and dog ear one end of the wire, which just means make a little loop, and then put that loop around your thread and bring it towards the body of your fly and wrap it back. This will keep the wire from slipping out. Now go to some brown grizzly bugger pack hackle. Go to the end and kind of get rid of all the fluffy fibers near the butt of the stem. Now go to the tip and kind of pull the fibers down to expose the very tip, and then cut that, leaving a small triangle. That's what we will tie in. With the shiny side facing towards you, go ahead and tie the small triangle that we cut earlier on your side of the fly. Again, at the back of the hook. That's where the tie-in is. Now go to some sparkle chenille, here in rusty brown, or rusty orange. Strip off to expose the cotton core, and then bring that again to the back part of the fly and tie it down. This will create less bulk. Then go to some barred and speckled crazy legs, here orange. Get 2 free from the rest of the clump and fold them in half, aligning the tips, and then cut the connecting tips off and then cut the loop. This will give you 4 individual legs. Take one of the legs and tie it in on the far side, just in front of the point. You should fold this in half, bring it up, and tie it on the far side. And do the same thing, fold it over the thread, but this time bring it on the near side. Then advance your thread, again, about a third of the hook shank up from where we just tied the rubber legs, and do the same exact thing with the other 2 legs. Make sure you're taking wraps that are good and well and will hold the rubber legs down but won't cut through them. And push the rubber legs back and advance your thread just behind the bead. With the first set of rubber legs, put them over the bead and just take a couple loose wraps. And then do that as you go down towards the last pair of rubber legs. Push this next pair up, a couple wraps, and then the next pair up, a couple wraps, and then the last pair up and a couple wraps. Now grab the chenille. Start making touching wraps up towards the bead. Once you reach the first rubber leg pair, go ahead and undo your third wraps and make the rubber legs go back and then take a wrap in front of the rubber legs, and then unwind the next set of rubber legs. Tying the rubber legs in this fashion will kind of help you wrap the chenille up without having to deal with all 2 sets of the rubber legs at once. And once you reach the last pair of rubber legs, go ahead and unwind them, push them back and advance your chenille. And then once you reach the bead with your chenille, go ahead and tie it off. And then you can go ahead and cut the rest of the chenille off. Now you want your rubber legs to extend out of the body about 1 hook shank in length. You can measure it with your scissors. And then when you got the measurement down, you want to pick up all the rubber legs, making sure not to stretch them above the fly, and cut them, all in 1 length. It's okay if some are a little bit longer than others. Now grab the hackle. Start making open spiral wraps up towards the bead. About 5 or 6 is good. This is where it gets kind of tricky, as since you're no longer holding the rubber legs with your thread, you kind of have to weave the hackle in between each one. Then once you reach behind the bead, go ahead and do a couple more wraps to create a denser collar. Bring your thread up and tie the hackle off. Once the hackle is secure, you can cut the rest of the stem and fibers off. Now you can go ahead and grab the wire. I like to counter wrap it, but you don't have to. Try to get a wrap over each individual wrap of hackle, and work your way up towards behind the bead. Once you reach behind the bead, go ahead and press the hackle back and bring your wire forward, and then tie it off with the thread. Once it's secure, you can go ahead and helicopter or cut the wire off. Now, create a small collar with the thread, creating a small hot spot near the back of the bead. And once that's good, you can go ahead and whip finish. And secure the thread, and then cut it off. Cut anything that's cattywampus, and then the fly's good to go. You can add some super glue to the head if you want, and maybe trim up the legs if some of them are a bit longer. But that's it, that's the fly.